This is the RFR Mandalorian After Show.
Well, I think if we'd have known that Baby Yoda was going to end up in the hands of a couple of comedians, we might not have been as concerned. What was that? Jason Sudeikis, I think it was, in the as one of the scout troopers. No, but he kept punching him. And every time Baby Yoda got one of those little smacks inside that sack, I felt it. I really did. Wow, what a finale. I'm exhausted. Truly, I'm exhausted. This show, I don't know how they managed to do it. They go 39 minutes and it feels like 2 hours. And I don't mean to suggest that it's labored. I don't mean to suggest that I'm not enjoying myself. But man, oh man, it just wipes me out. It really does. In a good way. But I'm certainly not ready for this season to wrap up. I want more Mandalorian, and I'm pretty bummed already. I'm kind of dealing with the aftermath of this and wishing that we had more next week. But we don't. But you know what we do have? We do have the Rebel Force Radio Mandalorian After Show. We're here to break it all down for you. And there will be, I'm sure, many months between now and season 2 when we can go back, revisit some of these episodes, look at the whole season in its totality. So more Mandalorian coverage coming from Rebel Force Radio. But first, the task at hand is to cover this season finale. We're talking about Chapter 8. And with me this week, of course, from Chicago, my good friend and yours, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Mando Maniacs. The season has finally come to an end. It seems like it just started. But the anticipation building up to it, which for me legitimately began in Star Wars Celebration Chicago when we got our first glimpses of this show. And I was excited then and very pumped up. Did this season 1 live up to the hype and the expectation and the excitement? I say absolutely yes. I don't think the jury is out on that at all. I think everyone has come back in full agreement that The Mandalorian has been a smash success across the board. And it ticks off all the right boxes on my Star Wars checklist. And I'm really just basking in the joy and excitement that this first season brought me. And even along with it, some revelations about certain elements of the Star Wars universe and the nature of the Mandalorian themselves. It's all been a real thrill ride filled with great characters, cool special effects, and lots of love for the history of Star Wars, specifically the original trilogy. So I am very excited to get together with you here as we rock along the holiday season with so much Star Wars happening. I froze today at 1 minute thinking to myself, is this too much Star Wars? Have we hit peak too much Star Wars? And I say absolutely not, as long as the quality and the execution is pulled off, as well as things like The Mandalorian. So what a fun thrill ride it's been. I'm looking forward to breaking down this episode with you, Jason, our special guest, and of course, our live callers that we'll be taking for the next couple hours here on the RFR Mandalorian After Show. Welcome, everyone.
I have spoken.
And I have spoken.
There it is. Yeah, so if you would like to get in the queue to call, the number is 708-866-1737. That's 708-866-1737. If you want to talk about this episode in particular, we'd love to hear from you. We'll pop you on. And Jim, as you mentioned, we do have a very special guest. I'm very excited to welcome back my best buddy in the whole wide galaxy, Pete. Pete is back. There he is.
Welcome home.
We're so glad.
For anybody that hasn't been here, since like 13 years ago, that's what I used to say.
That was the big catchphrase.
That was it a long time ago.
But you know what? I was telling Pete, we were just at the big event, Skywalker Rises in Ohio, and we had so many people coming up to me saying, "How's Pete? How's Pete? When's Pete going to be back on?" So, Pete, you have been gone a while, but certainly not forgotten.
Well,
that's
that warms
for sure.
my heart.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to be the one to say that, they were on the bandwagon first, right? This Rebel Force Radio thing, I remember back in the day when it was Jason and Pete, So it's really great. So anyway, let's get down to it. We've got lots to talk about. As we said, this is Chapter 8 of The Mandalorian. And give you the tail of the tape here. We're talking about an episode called Redemption. And the director is Taika Waititi, and the director of the episode, Jon Favreau. Original air date, December 27th, 2019. And I remember us all saying, Jim, that they didn't care. Holidays. Back in the days of the Clone Wars, they used to take 2-3 week hiatuses around the holidays. Mm-hmm. Not with The Mandalorian. Every week there's a new episode. Doesn't matter whether it's Thanksgiving or the couple days after Christmas.
I like it. I like the once a week rollout. I prefer that to long, stretched out seasons that take over a number of months with huge breaks in between episodes. And I also strongly prefer it to the Netflix model of dumping full seasons at once so people can binge them. This has helped us develop as Star Wars fans, as the Star Wars fan base and legitimate fan community. We've been able to nurture this story along with its rollout. And that kind of thing is impossible to do when these companies like Netflix dump entire seasons at once. I have no problem binge watching seasons, but when it's being rolled out, I'd rather not have it all just dumped on me, because everything begins and ends as far as discourse and speculation all at once. And I think it puts a tremendous pressure on the viewer to watch the episodes as fast as they possibly can before spoilers get out there, etc. So I greatly prefer the week-by-week rollout, taking no breaks. If shorter seasons is what makes that possible, then I say, yes, thumbs up, I'm all for it. Good move, Disney Plus.
Along those lines, Pete and I were talking about this before we started recording, that the whole, aspect of how Baby Yoda was kept what was such a well-kept secret. And even though we as dads would like to be showering our children with gifts of Baby Yoda, that's gifts, not gifts of Baby Yoda. There's plenty of gifts, not a lot of gifts of Baby Yoda. The fact of the matter is that, we've joked about it on this show for many years that it's the licensees in particular. Looking at you, Hasbro, love you, but if anybody has a problem with leaks over the years, it's been Hasbro and some of the other licensees. And I really believe, and I said this to Pete earlier tonight, that had they leaked Baby Yoda and had people had an opportunity to see this character in a screenshot or in a toy form before there was context, I think it'd have gone horribly wrong.
No, that's very possible. Because when you think about it on paper, if someone told you a year ago the new Star Wars streaming series is going to be about a Boba Fett lookalike who is protecting an infant Yoda, I think you might have kind of thought, wow, that sounds really weird. That sounds like it's going to be dumbed down for little kids, or you can jump to so many different conclusions. I am very thankful that we have been able to judge this and summarize what's been happening as far as the series rolling out without having that preconceived and out of context judgment about something before we finally see it then unveiled in the final product. And it does a lot then for the storytellers too. It returns a lot of power to them, which is a rare commodity in this day and age of social media and lack of any sort of morals by people who put spoilers out, etc. So,
well, not to go too far of a rabbit trail, but I'm a big fan of the Batman film series, and if you haven't had a chance to pick up that box set of the Tim Burton era Batmans, you got to watch the Batman and Robin one, because director Joel Schumacher talks about what can happen when the licensees get too involved in a film project. They're there on the set, they're critiquing some of the design, some of the things, saying this isn't toyetic, or this isn't going to make for a good toy. And so they can start to dictate in some ways some of the things that are happening on the screen, as certainly not what we want to happen with our Star Wars. So I am glad, as you point out, Jim, that it wasn't the tail wagging the dog here, that this Baby Yoda was such an incredible rollout. And another thing that we were talking about is, I'm going to go on record and say that I think Baby Yoda is the biggest thing to come out of Star Wars since Star Wars. I don't think there has been any character or any concept out of Star Wars that has taken mainstream public by storm quite like Baby Yoda.
Well, Yoda himself.
No, not even Yoda himself.
Oh, no, I disagree with that.
No, I agree with Jason 100%. I think this is the first real phenomenon that's come out of Star Wars in a while. Even though there was a lot of hype around everything, it was singularities around the fact that there was a new movie, or that there was a new trilogy, or that there was new content. This is the first time that we've really seen something that is taking the social media world by storm, and taking off and having context outside of, and a life outside of the show and the movies that they've been in. I really think this is something that's relatable to everything. It's my kids know about it, and they haven't really even watched the series. And it's not because
that's the litmus test, right? That's the litmus test. Is, do the people around the water cooler at work who aren't even watching the show know who the character is? Since the original trilogy has anything come into mainstream consciousness quite like Baby Yoda.
Oh, how quickly we all forget the Kitster phenomena.
Oh,
hey,
no, come on.
Come on.
All right, well, let's talk about this episode. Jim, I know that the safety of Baby Yoda has been at the forefront of your mind. You were reminding us all as we were celebrating episode 9 at the Playhouse Square. You were so quick to say, what are we all doing here?
Very selfish.
Baby Yoda is very selfish. Baby Yoda is in the clutches of evil, and we should be out there doing our part. I think you were trying to get us to just jump out of the theater and go see if we could find this little guy.
Yeah, I was about ready to start handing out the pitchforks and lightsabers. But no, as it appears that we were put at ease relatively quickly in this episode when Baby Yoda only had to suffer at the hands of asshat scout trooper bikers who punched the bag that Baby Yoda was residing in. And at that point, I wanted to punch a bag too. And that bag happened to be part of the anatomy of both of those scout troopers. How dare they lay a hand on sweet, sweet Baby Yoda and abuse that precious little urchin. I mean, the cargo they had there was so valuable, and they were just treating it like it was some sort of rodent or something. I just wanted to jump into my...
You know what? They keep asking if it's a pet.
Yeah, well,
is it a child? Is it a pet? No one knows what it is. It is very important. Yes.
I think that's important because it is symbolic. That kind of dialogue is symbolic of the rarity of the Yoda species throughout the Star Wars galaxy. It's not like that they're very common. They're not like, Rhodians or what have you. These guys are a very rare species. And it appears that Force connection comes with them naturally. It's a natural part of their physicality.
It does. It does seem that, not to jump too far ahead, but we'll throw it out there. The Armorer reveals that there are legends in Mandalorian history of a race of sorcerers. And I'll tell you, When I heard the word sorcerer, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I keep going back to what Werner Herzog said about what Dave and John are doing here, which is creating this brand new mythology within an established mythology. And I couldn't be more excited when I hear that. This is about going back to the roots, I think, of what Star Wars really is, which is just creating all of this incredible backstory, this history. And finally, we've got even a small reveal, a small glimpse of what might be, a tell when it comes to the species of, well, whatever that species is of Yoda, which is, as you say, Jim, natural force wielders, sorcerers. There was, apparently, perhaps some war that took place between the Mandalorians and these sorcerers. Now, she used the term Jedi. So, should we assume, I'm going to throw this to Pete. Pete, should we assume that what the armorer was talking about was the Jedi in general when she was referring to these sorcerers? Or was she talking about a species or a race of creatures that obviously she was reminded of by sweet, sweet baby Yoda?
Well, I think that's the brilliance of it, is that you can draw your own conclusions about a whole lot of what she was talking about. And I, in particular, kind of agree with you that it's more, I like to think that the rarity of the Yoda species is more important as far as being the apex, if you will, of the Jedi Order and the beginning of the religion, if you will, and how everything got started in the mythology of it. So I'm hopeful that that's where it heads. But even if it is just the Jedi in general being sorcerers and wizards, I can live with that. That's kind of what we've all thought in the back of our heads anyway.
So, Jim, your thoughts on, when she uses this term sorcerers and this battle that was, or this war that was spoken of back in she even says that there were songs about it. This is how deep it goes into Mandalorian culture. What are we dealing with? Are we talking about the Jedi Order in general? Or are we talking about specifically something that is triggered in her by seeing Yoda or baby Yoda?
Well, that's really interesting because obviously we know the Mandalorians have had brushes with the Jedi going back to the Clone Wars. So that's, in my opinion, fairly recent history. Dealing with a post-empirical Star Wars universe makes you wonder how much information has been suppressed for the general population by the Empire themselves. What do they know? What has been reinforced as lies through propaganda? And what do people know? What do they honestly remember? I mean, obviously people are still living to remember what the Clone Wars were like, old enough to have seen Jedi in action, and old enough to see Mandalorians battle Jedi, as we know happened in the Clone Wars. You can look at the animated series and see Jedi interaction with Mandalorians. So I tend to believe she's talking about an older conflict that took place between ancient Mandalorians and ancient Yodas. And that was specifically the first time maybe that the Mandalorians really made their presence known throughout the galaxy as a warrior race. And it took a band of Yodas to shut them down. Who knows? But I don't think she's specifically talking about Jedi on a broad scale, because obviously there would be people who were alive back in the day of the Clone Wars here in this era of The Mandalorian who would remember the Jedi involvement in the Mandalorian conflict.
I got to tell you, this is one part of the overall Star Wars mythology that I tend to struggle with, which is just how, and Jim, we talked about this not long ago, how well known were the Jedi, the concept of the Force. We referred back to the opening crawl of episode 3, where it sounded like Anakin and Obi-Wan and the heroes of the Clone Wars were household names across the galaxy. And so we keep vacillating between this idea that the Force and the Jedi were something of a, are relegated to myth and legend, to the fact that they're on the nightly news. So I'm struggling with this one a bit.
Yeah, me too. I haven't really been able to find much consistency in that. That's why I think the armor is specifically recalling ancient history between the Jedi or the Yodas, and the Yodas may be specifically the original Jedi. So
the Wills, perhaps.
Wills, maybe that is the name of their species. So now I think we're going to be going into an area of storytelling where some mysteries are going to be revealed about Yoda and his species, because to jump to the end, I mean, that's obviously where season 2 is going to be taking us. That's a mission that the Mandalorian himself is on. And
this is the way.
This is the way. And he represents Star Wars fans in general, because we've been searching information for Yoda's species for decades ourselves. So the Mandalorian kind of is carrying out a mission for us as fans in many ways as we rock into season 2. And we see that will probably be the thread that runs through the entire season, is the Mandalorian now searching for Yoda's species so he can deliver them this infant.
Yeah.
But it's a big mystery. Who are they? Where are they? What are they? How do you find them?
Right. The episode begins right where chapter 7 left off, where you have our heroes, Greef Carga, Cara Dune, and the Mandalorian. They're kind of, hunkered down in this building where Moff Gideon had already wiped out the client and his ragtag group of stormtroopers, brought in his own infantry. He's got death troopers. He's got shiny stormtroopers, and they're leveling the place. And flash over to where we saw the untimely and tragic death of Kuill. The stormtrooper or the biker scouts pick up the baby Yoda, and they are outwitted and outgunned quite handily by IG-11, who comically is the nurse droid, which I enjoyed that very much. I love that idea of a former bounty hunter turned nanny. And IG-11, I really grew to appreciate him, particularly in this episode, and I love what Kuill sort of turned him into, this protector, and ends up being quite the hero of this episode and maybe of the series, or of the season. So you've got Gideon, and the whole time I'm trying to figure out what is Gideon's play here, because he's asking. He knows he's got the scout troopers, and you never hear, to my knowledge, guys, any communication between Gideon and the scout troopers to confirm that something went wrong. So the last confirmation that we have from Gideon is that he believes that his soldiers have acquired the asset. They have the asset in their possession. They're there waiting for him to give the order, and he wants the surrender of Cara Dune, Greef Carga, and the Mandalorian. It doesn't seem interested in just killing them in cold blood. So I'm trying to figure out, what is his game plan with wanting these guys to just sort of, arms up. Why doesn't he just mow them down? He has the ability to do that.
Well, according to the dialogue in that scene, the Mandalorian said, obviously, we're still alive because he doesn't have the child.
Yeah.
So, why the delay, though? When he thought that the child was going to be delivered to him.
Maybe that's it. It's just he is convinced that until he has something in his hand, he's had enough issues with things going wrong that he's not going to overplay his hand until he actually knows what he's got.
Yeah. And so what I don't understand is why the scout troopers had to park outside of the compound with Baby Yoda. I mean, maybe they were thinking to protect it while the skirmish was still going down. There was that standoff.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so I think there was some dialogue there that sort of indicated that, and they were to hold off until everything simmered down. But at that point, then, you would expect Moff Gideon then to tell the E-Web guys to open fire on that place where they were hiding out in the compound and just blast them away. Oh, they have the baby? Then, okay, open fire.
Right,
Let's take care of this.
Yeah, no loose ends.
But see, everyone's afraid to approach Moff Gideon because he
Yes.
kills people for interrupting him. So I think news trickles down very slowly to the Moff.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody's
Right.
really in his ear because they're afraid of getting assassinated right in cold blood in front of everyone. So
Yeah, no, yeah, right. I mean, they realize that they're dealing with kind of a loose cannon here with Moff Gideon as they find out that he mowed down, the client's battalion of stormtroopers. He's like, oh, he murdered his own people, essentially is what he did. And they're like, yeah, that's how he rolls there.
Well, here's a guy who's presumed dead.
Right.
He was presumed given the death penalty because of war crimes he committed. So who put him down?
Mm-hmm.
The Empire or the New Republic?
Right.
I mean, was he tried by his own?
Oh, I think that what we're going to find out, that there was a Nuremberg-style series of trials that wiped out these. I mean, when you talk about the crimes of the Empire, entire systems destroyed. I mean, countless bouts of or instances of slavery, entire systems enslaved. You can just imagine what this fallout must have been like. And that's one of the things that makes this series so exciting, is that we're hearing little tidbits about that. Some of those tidbits include the Trail of 1,000 Tears, which we learned about that. We learned that the Imperials attacked and attempted to, or we assume took over Mandalore. We don't actually hear about Mandalore as a system much. So, I don't know what the status of Mandalore as a planet is in this timeline.
I think it's could be still under Imperial occupation, or it's been strip mined to death because the Imperials were looking for the Beskar. Mm-hmm. So they strip mined the planet to the point where it's no longer inhabitable. Those could be a couple of things that are happening in Mandalore, but I don't think that's actually been really defined yet in Mandalorian era Star Wars.
No, they're finding new areas to create history and backstory here. Of course, again, jumping to the end, we see Moff Gideon with the Dark Saber, and the last time we saw the Dark Saber, it was in the possession of Darth Maul.
No, Sabine Wren.
Oh, Sabine Wren. That's right. I take it back.
Or was it Bo-Katan?
And then it was passed on to Bo-Katan.
Right,
yes.
right.
Ah, Bo-Katan. Okay, so it went from Darth Maul to Sabine then to Bo-Katan. So she has it. So now we've got some potential explaining to do between how it ended up in the hand of Moff Gideon, though we can assume, Jim, to your point, is that when the Empire took over, that Gideon sort of found himself as, maybe the sort of the de facto ruler that was overseeing Mandalore. Though since the fall of the Empire, we don't necessarily know what we're dealing with on Mandalore.
Maybe Moff Gideon himself has Mandalorian background in his history. Maybe he himself is a Mandalorian or someone who took the creed, because he sure knows a lot about the identity of the Mando himself.
Right. So that's a big reveal. We get a name, though this was a rumor sometime back. We find out that it's confirmed that the name is Din Djarin. And the way that Gideon was able to discern this is that Din was a foundling and was adopted by the Mandalorian warriors and became part of the Creed, and that was written down in the archives, the history, the books there on Mandalore. So Gideon would have known who he is. Gideon also knows who Greef Carga is. Greef Carga is a former, what was his title that they say? What was Carga's title? He was
disgraced. He called him a
disgraced something. Maybe someone on the chat has it. Well, and then of course he knew Cara Dune, being a former Rebel shock trooper.
And he does mention that the Mandalorian himself was decommissioned. Essentially, he was
out of the guild.
Was it? Oh, I guess that would be. I thought he was revealing information about the Mandalorian's Mandalorian background. I think he was going deeper into history and not talking about the guild, but talking about maybe a Mandalorian army of some sort.
I think he was talking about. The guild. By the way, the term that he uses for Greef Karga is magistrate. So thank you, JM, on the chat. Disgraced magistrate who ends up, running the syndicate, the guild of bounty hunters. So I think that when he's talking about Din, the Mandalorian, being decommissioned, I think he's referring to the Guild of Bounty Hunters knowing what went down, and the fact, and he uses that. He says, he's like, because at one point Greef Karga says, well, what assurance do we have that you're a man of your word and that we can walk out of here and negotiate or come to some sort of terms? You're not going to kill us. And he says, well, essentially he says, I'll give you about the same consideration as you gave me, which is none. And you went back on your deal. You welched on the deal, and this is where we are. So, you basically live at my convenience. And once you're no longer useful to me, you're done. But so the guy is obviously extremely well learned. He knows who his enemies are. He knows what connections they have together, what connections they have to the bigger picture. And the fact that he's carrying that Dark Saber leads us to believe that he probably feels that he is the rightful leader of the Mandalorian people, I would think, or the Mandalorian Creed.
If he even cares.
Or if he cares, right. He may not even care, right.
Was able to pilfer it and keep it as a war trophy, and it's something that he considers a pretty damn effective weapon.
Yeah, it's probably that. Yeah, you're right, I think about that.
And especially a psychological weapon to use against the Mandalorian, too. If I could just take a quick shout out to the chat. We have John there, and John gave us a nice little $2 donation and reminds us about, he wants to bring back the discussion about those goofy biker scouts at the beginning who couldn't shoot straight to save their lives. The strong tradition of Imperial stormtroopers. Yes. But John does mention that the one scout that punched Baby Yoda was Jason Sudeikis.
Yes, of course.
I think they both punched Baby Yoda because the second one got bit and really gave that bad punch.
Well, it's that one little tooth, that one little bottom tooth that really gets you. Yeah.
So Jason Sudeikis, probably best known from his run at Saturday Night Live. He's done some movies and stuff. Real likable.
And the other guy was Adam Pally, who that name doesn't really mean anything to me. But
no, I actually like Adam Pally quite a bit.
Do you know who he is?
He's been in a couple series that I liked, and he's very funny.
What was he in?
He was in the Mindy Project, and then there was another one. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was one where it was a kind of an ensemble cast with. See, now you put me on the spot, Jim. This is not,
I do that.
That's what happens. But anyway, so he's Mindy Project and something else. So he's an established actor, comedian, and having him there with
and kind of an established nerd. I think if we're all kind of on the level, I think he kind of showed his stripes a couple of times in some public appearances. So I think he was probably pretty excited about landing this.
Yeah. Something else that we see with Mandalorian is he gets his signet, and he becomes one in a clan of two. After the armorer reminds him that the way forward for him is to take on the responsibility to Baby Yoda as his father figure, and to return him to his planet, return him to his species. This one kind of threw me. He talks about him being injured. He says, well, he's injured, but he's not weak, he says, I believe. And is the injury as the result of him using the Force to hold back that blast? Or is it a result of the abuse that he took from the biker scouts, this injury that he's talking about? And, the armorer, or he throws out even at one point, he's like, what do you want me to do? Train him? Train him, like you trained me as a Mandalorian? She goes, no, that would kill him. He's too weak. And he says he's injured, but he's not weak. So this whole thing. So I guess, why is he weak? Why is he injured? What injury are they talking about? And why he needs to be returned to his people?
Short term, the Force exhaustion that we've seen Baby Yoda demonstrate a few times. It knocks him out. But I haven't really taken account of any sort of weakness that he has succumbed to at all, or injury or anything like that, unless, one of those comedian biker scout troopers punched him really hard, The one was concerned about permanent damage. He hasn't moved for a while.
Yeah. He just wanted to see what this thing was. He wanted to peek.
Did anyone get a good look at the signet itself? They made it really hard to kind of see, but I believe it was finally the Mudhorn itself. She wanted to give him the Mudhorn in, I think, the second episode or third episode of the series.
Yeah.
I think it's a Mudhorn skull.
Mm-hmm.
He refused that signet to begin with, because he said, well, I wasn't the one who killed the Mudhorn. I was rescued.
Yes, that's right.
And so by her giving it to him anyway, she says, you are two or one. You're a clan of two, essentially. So he can proudly then wear that signet, because he has that connection now with Baby Yoda. I'm not saying they're a Force dyad or anything crazy like that.
Right. Well, let's talk about the armorer. Again, this show, I can't even describe. I was watching this with my kids this afternoon, and I'm right with them. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I have no idea what's going to happen. And my daughter is so concerned about the safety of Baby Yoda. Is Baby Yoda going to die? Is Baby Yoda going to? And I'm like, no, Baby Yoda's in season 2. Ryan Johnson spoiled that for us. We know that. And then she's worried about Cara Dune. Is that moment when Cara is the only one left in the building, and she's taken all all of the blaster fire. Then she's worried about the Mandalorian when he's like, leave me here, I'm a goner, and all this stuff. And they're on the edge of their seats the entire time. It's like old time, TV to me. They're having a blast, but it does keep you on the edge of your seat. But let's talk about the armorer and that moment when she's surrounded by those stormtroopers, and you think, okay, this is it. It's going to be execution style. She's obviously involved in maybe some sort of prayer or something. And Pete, she more than is capable of holding her own, I would say.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it was funny because it was kind of like a sporting event where you just never were in doubt about the ending. Like, she was overmatched and overwhelmed, but you were like, well, yeah, but it's coming. It's coming for these guys.
Oh, so you knew that this was it?
I didn't know, but I was confident that more so than I was with some of the other characters, that she was going to do something. What I initially thought was it wasn't her, that she had just put the armor there. And then she was going to come out of the shadows.
Like it could be like a broom handle was going to fall over in there.
Right.
Like a Scooby-Doo trick.
But none of that for the Mandalorians. They're just, as soon as you get close enough, we're going to bite your hand, and then it's going to be all over for you. So yeah. I love that scene because we hadn't seen her in action yet. and you just knew that there was something important about her and something that was going to bring her out of the shadows. Well,
she was very confident. Right? She was very confident. She didn't run. She didn't, hightail it out of there with Mandalorian and Greef, Carga and Cara Dune. She just obliterates these troopers.
It was brutal. I did think of the scene because I haven't let my kids watch it yet. So it was one of those scenes that I'm mentally marking. Like, all right, I'm going to have them cover their eyes for this moment because it is just full on brutal.
Oh, when the
crunching
armor.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it, but also as a dad, I'm thinking, and this might be where I go wrong as a parent.
Well, you're a better dad than I am, apparently, because I was like, hey, kids, let's watch The Mandalorian.
Come on in here.
Remember Baby Yoda?
Bring the hammer.
Cute. Yeah, but no, it did. I mean, it did affect them. I mean, they couldn't believe. I mean, my son thought it was the coolest thing ever. He's like, when their helmet shattered, I love that.
Along with the nice touch of adding the little plastic white shards flying through the air and stuff.
Oh my gosh, it was it was great. So
a very satisfying crunch.
Yeah.
Yes. Satisfying is the right word.
Satisfying is the right word for sure. So I don't think we've seen the last of the Armorer, though. No. I think we can assume that the Mandalorian, Din, feels that he's probably seen her for the last time, that she's going to make one last stand there. So that was awesome. She's fantastic. We learn a lot more about the Mando Din's history. Jim, we see some of those familiar scenes of him being, stowed away in that container by his parents. Yeah, and then the next thing that he sees is he's looking at a super battle droid, and then pew, pew. We've got a Mandalorian coming to the rescue. And so how does this inform you? Because, some of the things that we speculated, was he found by a Jedi? Was he found by Yoda? And that's why he has this affinity for this child. Right. How does this change your perception of the Mandalorian by seeing that he was scooped up by the Mandalorians proper at such a young age?
Well, really none at all, because I feel like it was the most obvious scenario. I really did want to see Yoda there open up the door. I thought that would have just been the bomb, man, if Yoda was there. And then that would develop the affinity that he has toward that species. So meeting Baby Yoda would have brought all that back. I can't abandon this kid because his very own kind saved me from certain death when I was but a child. So I kind of like that romantic rhythm there of history repeating itself, as it often does in Star Wars. But I thought it was really the most obvious thing to have a Mandalorian there save young Din. I keep calling him Din from the battle droid. Yeah. Because then, that's obviously his gateway into the Mandalorian culture and the creed and becoming a Mandalorian himself. But I really enjoyed seeing those Mandalorians in battle, to see a whole group of them like that. Prime Mandalorians doing what they jetpacks and all of that. I love the great perspective of Mandalorian flight with the backpack when you see the kid's view in the clutches of the Mandalorian warrior as he looks down on the battle happening beneath them as they're flying through the air in the jetpack. I love that. It may feel video game to some people, but I really enjoyed that perspective. I felt like I was there with those guys.
Oh, I did too.
Like the Mandalorian, just picture that Mandalorian warrior holding that little child, and then me hanging on, wow, look at down there.
Well, speaking of before I get into the whole big battle at the end with the jetpack on the TIE fighter and all of that, let's talk a little bit about what we know of the Mandalorians in context of this show. They're a creed, not a race, something we suspected. How much, Pete? I know you were a big fan of the Clone Wars and Rebels. How much do you think this is at odds with what we know of the Mandalorians that we were introduced to in those animated series from Dave Filoni, where they seemed very much, proprietary and all about the warrior race and the genes and the clans and all of that?
Well, I think it actually fits pretty well together with it, because it speaks more to there was when we saw them in the Clone Wars, there was a lot of pride that went along with the Mandalore race, and there was intersecting battles in between them to try and find out who should be the ruler of that clan. And I think it's been very humbling for them in the period between then and now. And so what they've gone back to is what's the grassroots of what we've been, what is the core of what we should be going forward. And so they're back in the shadows. They've understood that they were beaten down, and now in order to rise up again, they've got to change the way that they did things. And so I think this is the start of where they're headed, or at least it was a start, not the start, but a start of where they were heading. And now they've got to do it again because they feel they've been pushed back one more time.
Yeah, it's not about bloodlines anymore.
Right.
It's not about bloodlines. It's
survival.
It's survival, and that's exactly what it is. And you can imagine, look, if you're Palpatine, if you're the Emperor, and you are trying to establish rule throughout the galaxy, man, oh man, you're going to have your eye on the Mandalorians, Jim, because these are the folks that are going to probably give you the most trouble when it comes to, acquiescing to your reign as Emperor of the universe. If anyone is going to be a thorn in your side, it's going to be this ultimate warrior race. And it sounds like the Empire was pretty merciless when it comes to the Mandalorians.
Oh, without question. And we have heard several examples in the past of the Emperor himself placing top priority on snuffing out rebellion. He even pontificates on it pretty hard in The Rise of Skywalker, as he's trying to get Rey to kill him and take her powers and everything. He says, witness the end of the rebellion. He wants to end that conflict. It's caused him a lot of problems over the years, and he's always made it top priority. The whole idea of the Death Star itself was designed to strike fear in the galaxy and quell rebellion. And that would definitely be something, if I was somebody looking to stop any sort of military uprising throughout the galaxy, one of the first places I'd start looking pretty hard at is that Mandalorian system. These are people who've developed great technologies that isn't readily available outside of their warrior culture. They are fierce warriors in their own right, and have proven time and time again to occasionally cause problems for legitimate established governments, especially in the Old Republic era. So
they were a thorn in the side, absolutely, of the Old Republic as well. And during the battles between the Separatists and in the Old Republic, it absolutely, they were problematic then, and I'm sure they were problematic as the Emperor is trying to consolidate his power.
But what we deal with nowadays is a Mandalorian culture that is struggling to maintain its existence. So when you look back at source material like the Clone Wars animated series, or even like those Mandalorian novels that were written by Karen Traviss and other expanded universe dives into Mandalorian culture, you can clearly see that this is a culture and a race and a creed, or whatever you want to call it. It all boils down to this warrior lifestyle, this warrior culture.
But it's not about blood anymore.
Not anymore, because it's come down to protecting this creed, this lifestyle from extinction.
The culture, They'll welcome anybody as long as you're willing to agree and abide by the creed and carry the culture forward, it doesn't matter. And they were also, it seems like, very proactive in grabbing younglings that were the victims of the Clone Wars and the rebellion, the Galactic Civil War, and utilizing these orphans in a sense to kind of add more numbers to their troops. So it was humanitarian in one sense, but also a little self-serving in the other sense, because Pete, they were able to increase their numbers by taking on these foundlings.
Yeah, and actually going back to what you guys kind of were discussing a little bit earlier, when they threw open the door in the flashback, I actually thought it was going to be Gideon because of where it was placed in the episode. I thought that it was possible because it was going to explain why he knew who Din was. And going back to what you guys were talking about, it could be that he was that Mandalorian that pulled him out. He might be part of that foundling culture. He might be part of all of this and has decided that he wants to go the Imperial route instead. So there's at least a little bit of enough of intrigue there that drives us towards, well, this story isn't over, that the explanation might not just be as clear as we think. It might be, but it might not be.
Yeah. When the Mandalorian comes upon the pile of Mandalorian armor that's laying there in the sewers, and he picks up that helmet, I got to be honest, I expected the head to just drop out of the bottom of that helmet. I really did. I thought, how far are Filoni and Favreau willing to go?
It didn't happen in episode 2 when Boba picked up Jango's helmet.
Well, that's true, because we saw the shadow.
Yeah,
it was reminiscent of that because we saw the shadow of the head roll out of there. All right, we've got a lot of people on the lines. Let's go ahead and start taking some calls here. Let's go with, we've got Georgia on the line, I believe. Hello, Georgia. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello, Georgia.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Well, I'm a first-time caller. Big fan of the show for the past couple of years.
Thank you.
So,
what's on your mind tonight?
great episode. I like the very ending. Dave Filoni, like the Mando hopping on the TIE fighter.
Mm-hmm. that was one heck of a finale. It seems like Mandalorian knew a little bit more about that jetpack than the armorer may have believed. She's like, well, you need to go out and practice, do your drills. It's going to take some time for you to get to know it. And I was relieved that he wasn't a total natural. He knew enough to actually make what he needed to happen, but it wasn't full of grace and skill. You still with us, Georgia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was probably the best part between that and Moff Gideon just popping out the TIE fighter with the Dark Saber.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was
I was quite surprised.
Yeah, that was a great reveal, great surprise, and I'm replaying the conversation we just had. I think Jimmy's right. This is not a guy that was I don't think was trying to employ any leadership or takeover of the Mandalorian people. I think that this was just another trophy of his. He sees it as a useful weapon, a sharp tool, as Snoke might say. In episode 8, something that he can use to his advantage, but it probably doesn't have anywhere near the value of it that it would to a real Mandalorian. But the fact that it's out there and to be had, and we know that the Mandalorian people feel that is a symbol of the rightful ruler. It certainly leaves some interesting breadcrumbs for future episodes of this series. Were you happy for this as in terms of an ending for season 1?
Oh yes, I was hoping. I want more. I want another episode.
Yeah, we all do. And I don't think Jim, you're usually the guy that has his ears to the ground more than anyone. Are there any rumors, any rumblings about when we might see a season 2 premiere?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Jon Favreau recently took to the Instagram and put up a shot of a very buff, topless Gamorrean guard.
What? Seriously?
Yep, that's our first tease for season 2 of The Mandalorian. And John let us know, gave us solid confirmation. The Mandalorian season 2 will return. The Mandalorian will return. That is fall 2020. So we're not going to have to wait too long. We're just going to have to get through half the year or maybe a little more. And
All
we'll
right,
see.
here it
Now,
is. We got
very possibly they will drop it early November of 2020, very similar to how they did it this year. That coincided with the launch of Disney Plus, but I don't know. Something tells me they're going to want to keep riding the momentum from The Mandalorian, and we'll see a season 2 premiere happening earlier in the fall. Jason, were you able to find the image of that?
I've got it up here. I'm sorry that you can't see it.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
Yeah, so we've got this Gamorrean guard looks like he's in a little bit better shape than the ones we saw in Jabba's palace.
Oh, he's buff.
This would be one of those maquettes.
Yeah, that is a maquette for sure.
Yeah, so. One of those maquettes that George would go around and approve or disapprove. So Mandalorian coming fall 2020. So we've got almost a year until we see this. Man, oh man!
I like this. I like that photo because
I hope he doesn't speak.
if you show it side by side with what we know of the Gamorrean guards, it's like what I look like versus what I see in the mirror.
I certainly hope that's not like a grown-up baby Yoda either.
Oh, jeez. All right. Hey, appreciate it. Thanks very much for calling, Georgia. I'm sorry we didn't get your name. I should ask your name. I got to do that. Remind me to do that. Let's see. Let's find another first-time caller. Let's go to Florida. We all...
Daniel?
Hey, Daniel.
Hey, I think we might have actually got two. I apologize. We've got two callers on here at the same time. Hey, so
maybe we'll make a love connection.
All right,
something.
let's just go with it. Let's go with Florida first. This is Daniel from Florida.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. It threw me off. I didn't expect to get through so quickly. I guess there was a crack in the ozone somewhere there.
No, I don't think so. I tell you what, we like to give some preference to the folks that are new callers, and I see that you haven't talked to us in quite a while. So nice to hear from you again.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you guys. It's more just to call in and comment. I just
please do
was blown away by the episode. And I'm assuming you guys saw the credits, and I apologize, this is already mentioned, but that, and I'm not going to butcher the director's name, but that he was the IG droid, I guess.
Yeah. Taika Waititi is also the voice of IG-11.
Very cool.
Yeah, he's.
I just heard you guys mention fall. It's returning?
Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be a long year.
Well, we have the Clone Wars coming next month. And followed by the home video release of Episode 9 with the novelization. And what else we got going on?
The whole Skywalker saga box set is coming out in beautiful 4K. I'm excited about that.
Some fresh new unreleased material in that. I hope, fingers crossed. I don't know anything about it. So we'll have a few things. And of course, there's a big convention this summer in Anaheim, where a bunch of Star Wars fans are going to be getting their geek on. And Swank and myself and Billy Mack will be there. And what else we got going on until season 2 of The Mandalorian? Probably all kind of. I got to get caught up on this Jedi Fallen Order video game. I was playing it pretty heavily at first, and then so much got in the way over the course of the last month. I'm looking forward to getting into that a little bit here in the next week. Anything else going on Star Wars wise? I think we're going to have a lot to keep ourselves busy, quite honestly, until season 2.
I hope so. I hope so.
It does show our age a little bit that that none of us blinked when Jim called it the home video version of Rise of Skywalker.
Well, what's wrong with
I'm going to go rent that video cassette.
I'll get it from Blockbuster.
A home video release. I mean, how
right. I don't know. You're right. I mean, how else do you even phrase that now?
If you're cool, you call it digital.
Digital. Well, but there's still a Blu-ray with it and a box set, Pete. So.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah. Hey, Orlando, thanks for calling. Appreciate it very much. I think we also have, I'm going to say, Jesse in Nebraska. Jesse, are you with us?
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Jason. Are you there?
Hey, yeah. All right. What's going on?
Hey, not much. Little family Christmas this weekend. Just trying to relax. But,
we got a house full. We were able to get Pete on because he and the whole family are here visiting. The wives and the kids are upstairs waiting for us to wrap this up so they can come down and play with their stuff.
Yeah, my wife gave me hell. I'm sitting out here in the garage. I was waiting to get online or get on the phone with you guys. I appreciate you taking my call. But, first off, it was just I felt that, Moff Gideon in this episode, he seemed very Thrawn-like as far as knowing his enemies, who's coming after him. It just seemed like, he knew what was going on. It wasn't, just kind of a silly villain that we see.
Right. He was very, yes, I totally agree. He was very controlled, very methodical, not a lot of wasted effort. And, the fact that he's attacking these people, in his TIE fighter, shows a certain side of him. But you can't underestimate the Mandalorian, especially a Mandalorian with a new jetpack and a new signet, and off he goes. But he's a survivor. We know that he was assumed dead, and now twice, because I think they thought that he was dead when his TIE fighter went down and exploded. It's like Wile E. Coyote coming out of that thing. But your Thrawn reference, yeah, possibly. And, of course, with Episode 9, we can't discount the fact that we know now that, the Emperor has loyalists throughout the Empire, throughout industry in the galaxy far, far away. Could we find out that Gideon is an Emperor loyalist? That's another thought that crossed my mind.
I thought they took it a step too far, though, when they put that Los Pollos Hermanos bumper sticker on TIE fighter.
Little bit, yeah.
Pete gets that because he watched Breaking Bad.
I did. He's such a great villain.
Now, you guys have watched Breaking Bad. Do you see a similarity in the characters
at all? Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I haven't ever watched a second of it.
Is that right? In space right now. Yeah. He's just pushing Imperial propaganda and not meth, crystal meth. Okay. So
you have to have a backup plan, right?
His backup plan is the chicken, the chicken shop, the fast food place. So, no, I see just in the overall delivery of the threatening messages is very Gus Fring to me. I think Giancarlo Esposito is a really interesting guy to bring into Star Wars. He adds a whole nother layer of sliminess to the evil Imperial character. So I think it's great. And I was so happy to see he survived. I knew when we didn't see him actually die, like some sort of cockpit perspective of the ship going down, and we just saw the explosion over across the ridge there. I knew he was going to survive. That happens all the time in Star Wars. It happens.
Hey, Poe Dameron survived.
Right on. Yeah. So,
well, it's not like he was cut in half or anything.
I was shocked to see him with that Dark Saber. I didn't hear that, Pete.
It's not like he was cut in half or anything. I mean,
yeah,
that would be tough to survive.
Or went down a ventilation shaft at the hands of Darth Vader. Anybody can can survive
However,
in Star Wars.
I do think this is a character who is a prime candidate for eventually receiving some sort of grievous bodily harm and becoming part machine and part evil Imperial. So,
really? You're seeing some amputations maybe in his future?
I could see some droid enhancements for old Moff Gideon down the road. I think that would add a little bit of awesomeness to his character, quite honestly. And we've seen it before time and time again in Star Wars. Yeah. So if that happens, boy, I really pulled one out of my butt, and we can replay this audio down the road.
Jesse, any other thoughts you wanted to leave us with here before we let you go?
Well, as I was listening on my way down on the road, I was thinking, the fact that we've seen that stack of Mandalorian armor, the fact of repercussions of him having to expose the rest of his clan in, now that they're, slayed by the Empire, what was of the Empire on that planet, is that going to echo throughout the other Mandalorian clans and, allow him not to be welcome?
Well, it's an interesting thought about, okay, so this is a Mandalorian clan that's been living in the underground there on Navarro, which, by the way, I know I'm a little slow, but I've just realized that Navarro is awfully close to Navarone, the guns from Navarone, the Western, Navarro. I finally clicked to me today.
It could be a connection.
Yeah,
or
I think so.
A connection to Dave Navarro, former guitar player for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, among many other bands.
Hey, could be. But the fact, should we assume, as Jesse's saying, should we assume that there are other Mandalorian clans throughout the galaxy that are also in hiding, maybe in a similar situation? Yes? No?
Maybe.
It's possible.
I'll just agree with you because that's you're the host, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, should we assume that? Are there other Mandalorian clans that are in hiding in underground?
Well, it's kind of like the Jedi. There's going to be one popped up whenever there's a new video game or new show they've got to promote.
Right. That's an interesting parallel to bring. That is an interesting parallel to bring up, though. I do see the Mandalorian playing a very similar role to the Jedi in the post prequel era of Star Wars. Because I think that this is it. I think we're down to the nitty and the gritty. I think there's just a handful of survivors now actually wearing that armor. Mm-hmm. For the longest time, I carried around the notion that Boba Fett was the last of the Mandalorians, but it's kind of sketchy about his actual status as a Mandalorian.
Now, that's interesting, right? Now, let's talk about that. Hey, by the way, Jesse, thanks for calling in. Appreciate it. Very much. Let's talk about Boba Fett, because at the very end of the episode, we see Baby Yoda with a chain around his neck that has what looks to be the signet that Boba Fett also carried.
The Mandalorian death's head.
Right.
But I think that's become more symbolic of the Mandalorian creed itself, because we do see it earlier in the season when we first visit the armorer and the Mandalorian enters that lair where they're all hiding out, that covert hideout that they had, and you see that Mando death's head proudly displayed up on the wall. So I think that has a bigger significance to Mandalorians outside of the fact that it's something Boba Fett wears.
Yeah, and it showed up at Maz's castle too, so I would think that.
Okay, so it's not specific to Boba. Yeah, I see. Okay,
everything showed up at Maz's castle. I'm pretty sure.
There's a picture of me there, and I wasn't even sure how they got it.
Right. I saw a billboard for Hardee's.
Hey, I think someone's having a birthday tonight. Let's talk to Collinsville, Illinois. Is there a birthday in Collinsville, Illinois?
Hello, Jason.
Yeah, and Jimmy and Pete.
Yeah, it's actually Belleville.
Oh, sorry about that.
Hey,
all right.
Pete, I'm glad that I'm on the show with Pete too, because I've been listening all the way back to when Pete was hosting too.
Back when it was cool, I appreciate that.
That's a Jimmy Mac slam if
No,
I ever.
Oh, come on.
You know that.
This whole thing would have gone underwater if I didn't jump on board. So
It was already underwater, Jim. You just pulled it back to the surface.
Yeah. Well, that could very well be.
Jimmy, you know I love you. We hung out with you at the Galloping Ghost.
Oh, well, just remember what happens at the Ghost stays at the Ghost, sir. But
Of course, just like Vegas, man.
well, hey, good to hear from you again. What'd you think of this episode of The Mandalorian and season 1 on a whole?
I loved it. I got to say, Favreau and Filoni, they know how to do Star Wars right.
Here, I agree with that.
I'm going to say something that might be controversial. So get ready, Jason, because you usually say all the stuff that's controversial. So tonight it's going to be me. So, and I loved Rise of Skywalker. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was a great movie, but I felt more for IG-11 when he died than I do Rey, Poe, or Finn.
Well, that's interesting. And why do you feel that way? I mean, this is a character that's basically a knockoff of a background character from Empire Strikes Back. Very cool to see in action and everything. But how does the character of IG-11 resonate with you as a Star Wars fan more than Rey, Finn, or Poe?
Well, okay, I can't say it's just IG-11, but the cast as a whole, when you take Cara Dune and you take the Mando and IG and you put all them together, I don't know, it just kind of gives me the feel of Han, Luke, and Leia. Like that whole buddy relationship, just good time. I want to see more of it. That's what it is.
No, and I'm sorry, what was your name? I'm sorry.
Mike,
I really appreciate you jumping on with us, but I agree with you actually a lot. I actually did feel that IG-11, that's one of the genius of the show, right, is that you care about those characters from week to week, and it's more than just Baby Yoda. It's going all the way down to, you want IG-11 to be the hero. You want that redemption story. You want Cara Dune to get her revenge. Making you care about those characters is paramount to a good TV series, and they did it in spades. I was very pleased with how they pulled that off.
I totally agree. I mean, again, I love the new cast. I love the new movie. It's fantastic. But I don't know. This cast gives me more of a feel of Han, Luke, Leia, Lando, Chewie. It just, I feel more for this cast than I do the main films.
Wow. Well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, because I felt a lot for IG-11 in this episode. And, some of this stuff, it's very subjective. I'm with you. I understand what you're saying when you say that these characters resonate with you, they stick with you, you feel more invested in them than perhaps those in the sequel trilogy. It's hard to define. It's hard to say exactly why, but you just do. I look, all I can say is that I'm glad that you found something in the modern era of Star Wars that made you feel invested. And, hats off to you. I'll be honest with you. I didn't feel really anything for Poe, Finn, and Rey coming out of Last Jedi. Felt very empty, very cold, didn't care. But now I really do. And in fact, I was, coming out of Rise of Skywalker saying, I want to see more of these characters. I can't believe it's over. I want to see more. There are rumors that maybe we will see some more. Maybe not with those actors, but certainly with those characters. We'll be talking about that and a whole lot more on future episodes of Rebel Force Radio. So if you're just listening to the Mandalorian After Show, you got to check out the weekly flagship show, Rebel Force Radio. But no, I'm just glad that that this clicked with you. What are your hopes for next season?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't expecting Baby Yoda to go on. I figured the end of this season we would have seen Mando hand over Baby Yoda, and we might have learned the race of Baby Yoda. And
so you thought that's a good point. You thought that this season would wrap up with some finality with the Mando baby Yoda plot, and then we'd be off on something new for season 2. Interesting.
That's what I thought. So I don't know now, because now it sounds like Mando has been designated as his adopted father.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is great. I like that storyline. I don't know how Baby Yoda is going to fit into a Mando helmet, though.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when they were shooting. He's like, "What do I do? Train him?" It's like, where do I find a helmet that's going to fit this little guy? Hey, Michael, is he also your birthday?
Yes, today is my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday, man.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for calling in.
Today,
yeah.
Oh, I had this planned for 2 weeks that I was going to call in on my birthday.
Oh, man. Well, I'm so glad you did, and I'm glad you got through. And please continue to stay in touch, okay?
Happy birthday, Michael. This
Thank
is
you.
Michael Shanks, isn't it?
Thank you.
Mike Shanks.
Yes, it is.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I knew
Okay,
it.
he's been with us for a long time.
Mike, that's a great call.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It goes beyond even you recognizing and remembering who I was.
Oh, like I said, Pete, this is a great episode because I've been a fan since you were on the show. So, and I love all you guys. You guys
man.
are awesome.
Feelings mutual. Thank you very much, and happy birthday to you. Let's go to who do we got here? This is area code 203. Hello, 203. Hello.
Hey, it's Kevin.
Oh my gosh, Kevin Lyle, ladies and gentlemen,
Yay.
on the super guest hotline, and a big hero. I've got here my sweatshirt that was put together by our friend Cleveland Chris. And this was for our big event that we had at Playhouse Square, downtown Cleveland. Solo Rises in Ohio. We've got the official logo that was designed. It's a great mashup between the Ohio State Buckeyes icon and Star Wars. Thank you, Kevin Lyle. Many people were very pleased with that, so appreciate it.
That looks great.
Oh, did you
I
see
want
it?
one, and it says your name on it.
Yeah, I know. We should probably have made one for the guy that. We'll have to talk to Cleveland Chris. But you had texted me earlier. You said, "Hey, should I call in?" And I said, "Of course you should call in." But I'm curious, like, what was the? We talked to you. I think episode 1, episode 2 of the after show. We haven't heard from you in multiple episodes. What was it that made you want to call in for this episode?
I wanted to call in because I just felt the whole season was great. And I'll just be brief and say that I thought it was just a fantastic show. And just overall, it's so much fun. It's so great to see Star Wars back at the 10 level. And this series has been 10 out of 10. I've loved every episode, including this last episode. I watched it this morning at like 8 o'clock, and it was just fantastic.
Well,
am I there?
You're there. I totally agree with you. And for those of you that for those that know you, you're a tough guy. You're not a shill when it comes to Star Wars, Lucasfilm. You don't just accept everything as it's pushed towards you. And I think that you're a discerning eye when it comes to Star Wars, and the fact that this has hit you in all the right spots throughout this 8-episode season. I think that speaks well of the show. I know one of the reasons why, and we had people asking, why wasn't Kevin at Skywalker Rises in Ohio? One of the reasons why is
I blame Glenn Nelson.
Well, no. You're not going to blame Glenn Nelson. What you told us was, well, it's 5 days before Christmas, and you got a little girl the same age as my little girl, and those Santa years are quite precious. But you also said, gosh, evoking the line from Fanboys, you looked around and you're like, well, what if the movie sucks? What if and I drive all that way and the movie stinks.
Well,
I can't tell. I can't tell. I don't want to make this an episode 9 review show, but I'm dying to know. Do you wish that you would have made the trip to Cleveland? Was the movie worth making the trip to Cleveland for, Kevin?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
See, now don't you wish you would have been there with us, you and Glenn?
Yeah, both of us talked about that. It's the first thing we said when we got out and went downstairs to there's a bar underneath the movie theater, and we went there, and the first thing we said was that we should have gone. We should have gone to Cleveland. Because we were going back and forth with like, should we go? Should we not go? Like we had kids, and it's 4 days before Christmas, like you were saying. And then Glenn texted me, and he goes, "What if it sucks?" I was like, that was the nail in the coffin.
That was the Fanboys moment.
We went. We both liked it. I think Glenn liked it more than me. Glenn thought Glenn was just like, he was almost in tears. And when Ahsoka's voice came on, I mean, I thought he was going to start crying.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, he wrote the song about Ahsoka. He and Jimmy Mack could have gotten together. They could have, shared their blubbering.
Yeah, he said Glenn almost.
Oh, yeah. But Jimmy was, every once in a while you hear.
I went to the third screening for myself, and I was able to keep my act together for the most part, but I still did get choked up. I did get choked up, but I was not like profusely weeping like I was the first 2 times I saw it. And it's a whole weird phenomenon for me to be crying.
Did you cry during the movie?
I did. It hit me I had certain emotional responses to it being really, I think the overriding thing is just the fact that it's the end of this saga. And there were a lot of moments along the way where I really felt that and made me feel retrospective of the last 4 decades of being a fan, from the moment I was 8 years old till I had my own 8-year-olds, and then my 8-year-olds turned into 18-year-olds, and they beat the crap out of me all the time now. So that's, it's been a long, strange trip, and I felt a lot of it coming to a head there while I was watching episode 9, and I think that's the effect that the film desires to have on its viewers, and I bought it 100%. So yeah,
well,
I tested it, and it happened to me twice. So, and then I was at the theater last night, and I kept it together. I was by myself, so maybe I didn't have the protective layer of friends and family around me to shield me from any sort of judgment that might be happening around me. So maybe I kept it together a little bit better, but I still felt emotional responses building up in me at certain moments. It's the middle part of the film when Leia passes with R2 there, and then Chewie gets the news, and then Kylo has a reunion with Han, and then Luke appears. It was all just very heavy for me.
Hey, I'm glad that you brought that scene up, Jim, and at the risk of making this a episode 9 show, our pal Adam Giffey, he sent me this text. He said, third viewing observation. People don't give JJ enough credit or benefit of the doubt. Leia has the metal in her hands when she passes on. It is Han's metal. She conjures the vision of Han, and that's why it's given to Chewie. This is not fan service. It is thought through. That was from Adam, and that I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that she was laying there with one of the Yavin medals.
Yes, she was holding that, and then Maz retrieved.
No, I definitely saw it too, and I got to say, I think the most emotion I had in the whole movie was when Dennis came on the screen, because it was like 2 hours into the movie. I'm like, this guy don't show up, Jason and Jimmy are gonna freaking kill me.
Oh man, I tell you, that was one of the highlights of seeing it for the first time. Was I get this elbow from Jimmy Mack as soon as Wedge shows up and says, "I'm with you, Lando," and he just wipes the brow like, "Woo! Okay, check that box." That's awesome.
Exactly. I looked at Glenn and I go, thank God.
And we only had like Variety and Vanity Fair and publications like that covering the scoop that you helped us get. Hey man, we're gonna try to grab a couple other callers, but thanks for calling in, man. I appreciate it, and it means the world to us that you were able to put that great artwork together. I was just Pete's wife, who is not a big Star Wars fan by any stretch. I had the sweatshirt on that Cleveland Chris made for us, and she goes, "That's a really cool, look at that. It's Ohio State and Star Wars." So it went over really, really well. So thank you again so much for putting that together for us.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for letting me come on tonight. You guys have a good night.
Always, buddy. All right, man. Take care, Kevin. All right, let's try to grab a couple more. This one looks interesting. I'm going to, where's this one? I wanted this one for one. There it is. Who is this? I think we've got Christopher from Massachusetts. Christopher, you wanted to talk about Baby Yoda and Luke's Jedi Academy. I'm loving this idea. Yeah. Go for it.
So, I mean, first of all, the entire show is amazing. So we'll get that out of the way. And
which show? Our show or their show?
I think he's talking Mandalorian.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
fine.
Both.
Okay. All right.
Both.
All right. Thank you.
But when the armorer is giving the Mandalorian instructions about what to do with Baby Yoda, she tells him about the Jedi. And that's
right.
Going forward, that's his only clue about what he's going to be looking for when he's trying to find a place for Baby Yoda. Now, the only Jedi officially active in the entire galaxy when this show is set, as far as we know, is Luke Skywalker.
Dude.
So it seems to me that his quest is going to direct him directly, eventually, maybe by the end of season 2, to Luke Skywalker. And just to tie things in a neater bow, you have, Favreau's in charge of this, and he's connected with Sebastian Stan, who's expressed interest in playing Luke. So I've been geeking out for the past few hours ever since I saw the episode.
So you're thinking that we could see a Luke Skywalker appearance in perhaps season 2 of The Mandalorian?
I hope so.
Oh, would they go there? Would they go there?
Sure, why not? They should.
Why not? Right.
They should. They should. Now, Sebastian Stan, do you see him embodying the Mark Hamill created role of Luke Skywalker and doing so with authenticity and respect? I think there's a possibility. See, everyone is so excited about Sebastian taking the role of Luke because someone created a meme where they put Luke Skywalker's hair from the original 1977 film on a picture of Sebastian Stan, and the likeness is quite remarkable. But it takes more than just a look-alike to be able to embody the role of Luke Skywalker. And is Sebastian the guy? Maybe he is. Maybe he is. I certainly liked him as Bucky in the Marvel films, but that's pretty much the only thing I've ever seen him in. And those performances to me don't give any indication that he would be a likely candidate to take the role of Luke Skywalker. Oh, there it is. But
you know what? Hey,
that does look just like Mark Hamill there on the left. And it's actually Sebastian Stan with Mark's hair from Empire, actually. And, I get that. And that's the quickest way you could generate any sort of fan respect and response and support for a guy taking a famous role like that. Remember the guy who was on YouTube impersonating Harrison Ford as Han Solo in that cantina scene. I forget that guy's name, but people were all really, pushing him to get that role. After seeing Alden in the role of Han Solo, I think it's still quite debatable as to whether or not they made the right choice. I think the kid who played who was the lead in Baby Driver, would have been an excellent Han Solo.
Yeah.
But the way things work in Hollywood, it's oftentimes who you know, and Alden knew Steven Spielberg, so that greased the skids a little bit there, and he didn't do a good job.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for calling. My mind is totally spinning on this idea of a season 2 cameo by a Luke Skywalker. Pete, what do you think about? He brings up a great point. If you're going to follow the breadcrumbs to where you might, find some clues about this species and where you could reunite Baby Yoda with members of his own, all roads lead to Luke Skywalker 6 years after Return of the Jedi.
Well, that's all we're left with, right?
Yeah, I was more or less interpreting that to mean that he should be returned to his own species.
Yes, but how's
Jedi.
he going to find... Look, right, but the only clue he has to go on, because the species are unknown, is the word Jedi. And if he follows those clues, he may find himself there with Luke Skywalker.
I may have been interpreting that on a little bit more of a specific level than I should have. I narrowed it down to the species, not necessarily the Jedi in general. And I love the idea of that. Presenting Baby Yoda to Luke Skywalker. Oh my God. I just
I think there's a ton of franchise potential here. You get into a new series that's Luke Skywalker Jedi Academy. You get into the Yodas that you mentioned earlier, where it's just a sitcom about the Yodas and their family. Yeah, I mean, it's got plenty of potential.
Just the Yodas together?
Just the Yodas, and they're just in wacky situations every day.
Call it My Two Yodas.
That's right. Go back to My Probot Dad. I mean, we can bring it all back in. It's all going to be great.
All right, let's go. We got one more caller here. Let's take it. This is he's been on with us for a while, or at least on hold for a while. Let's talk to Ethan from Kansas City. Ethan, you're on with us, Rebel Force Radio. Hello, hello.
Hello, guys. It's nice to talk to you.
Well, it's nice for you to stay with us for so long on hold. Appreciate it. What's on your mind?
No, it's been a good show to listen to.
Thank you.
So, about an hour and a half ago or so, when I first called in, you guys were talking about Mandalorian history and stuff, and I went down the rabbit hole earlier today after watching the episode, trying to piece some things together based on what we know, which isn't really a lot. Most of it comes from Dave's, Filoni's other projects, with Clone Wars and Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
What we actually know, or at least what is still canon. First, okay, I'm getting way ahead of myself. I've been,
I know you've been on hold for like an hour and a half. It's all right, man. It's all yours. The stage is yours.
So, obviously at the end we get the Dark Saber, and what was going on in my head was just like, well, how the heck did this guy get it? I couldn't even really remember the last time that we really saw it, and so, with Disney Plus and everything, and with all of it right at my fingertips, I just popped on, those episodes from Rebels that featured the Dark Saber, and there is a point there where it talks about how the Dark Saber was first made by a Mandalorian Jedi way, 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 way back in the past, and that there were some Mandalorian
Jedi. A Mandalorian Jedi? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, if you want to go back and look, it was in the episode.
Well, I don't doubt you. I don't doubt
Trials of the Dark Saber. Trials of the Dark Saber was the episode. It was the one where Sabine is training with it and everything.
Well, we know that the Dark Saber was a precursor to the lightsaber. It was almost like it was.
Well, it's an ancient lightsaber.
Right,
so
right, exactly. A precursor to that.
You can say it's a precursor to the modern ones that have color. Yeah. But so, you were talking earlier about how the armorer is talking about, the Mandalorian song, some songs of the Mandalorians talking about how they had fought with these sorcerers in the past. And I think what she's referencing there are these ancient wars between the Jedi and the Mandalorians that are referenced a little bit there in Rebels in that episode.
Aha. Okay. All right. So what was the episode again of Rebels that you were referring to?
It's Trials of the Dark Saber.
Okay.
It's in season 3.
Right.
I think. Anyway.
No, it's good because I think we'll do some, to bridge the gap between seasons 1 and 2. We might do some homework assignments. We can go back and we can look at some of these episodes where there are Mandalorian threads that are laid out in some of these Clone Wars and Rebels series.
I can tell you it's a fun time because I've been doing it throughout this whole first season, here and there. Like I say, with Disney Plus, it's all right there.
Yeah, right.
So I went back and watched the Death Watch episodes from Clone Wars, and then everything that had to do with Mandalore from Rebels.
Yeah.
And then, so it's fun stuff. And I think, it's basically, from what I can tell, there's about a 10-year gap between when Sabine finally gives the saber over to Bo-Katan in Rebels and where we are in Mandalorian. Now, we don't know really what happened.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In this episode, though, Moff Gideon talks about this Night of 1,000 Tears and all of that, where, it seems like, it seems like Bo-Katan had a bunch of, united the clans with Dark Saber and everything, and then did kind of mounted a rebellion against the Empire for Mandalore, but it seems like that was quashed, and Moff Gideon took the saber at some point.
Yeah, right. And perhaps at that battle that Night of 1,000 Tears, probably is where he ended up with it. Ethan, hey, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with us. Man, oh man, there's so much. I'm going to go on record and say I think we probably need to do one more Mandalorian after show, and let's maybe take a larger view and look at the whole season in review. So I'm going to put it out there. I think we should do that. So that'll be coming up. We'll give you the details. Make sure you're following us on Rebel Force Radio, all of our social media channels, as well as on our website, rebelforceradio.com. Thanks everyone for calling in tonight. Appreciate it. Wish we could have gotten to everybody, but there's more callers than we have time for tonight. But this has been an absolute blast. So we're going to wrap things up here. Big thanks again to everybody who called in. What an incredible season. What a great episode. One of the things we didn't get to, guys, can you believe this? We didn't talk about seeing the Mandalorian's face.
That's right. And he looked just like Pedro Pascal. He got his ass kicked.
Yeah, I don't think this was John Wayne's grandson here. I think this was actually Pedro Pascal. He had to come into work that day. Poor guy.
No, it was nice to see that.
It was very cool.
And it's what helped really develop the bond between himself and the IG droid, finally.
Right.
Because he was distrusting of the IG droid throughout the entire episode due to his previous experience with that droid. But then having that droid be the only being of any sort to see his face since he was a child developed an instant bond between the Mandalorian and that droid.
Right. He says, I've never shown my face since I was a child to any other living thing. And IG-11 says, well, I'm not a living thing.
Right. So off with the helmet. But that was great. Back to spray. We got the introduction of back to spray into our live. So
he thought he was a goner. So that back to spray is some pretty powerful stuff.
Well, it surely must be, and it seems weird that the Mandalorian would want to keep his helmet on, even if it means preventing medical care.
Right.
In a moment of trauma.
He must be a Christian Scientist.
Yeah, well, it does. If anything, it does. It does shine a spotlight on his devotion to the cause,
the creed.
Yeah, and I have to break that creed. You're absolutely right. Plus, we learned a little bit about Cara Dune, or should I say, Cara Cynthia Dune
from Alderaan.
Okay, and so here we're dealing with a rebel shock trooper who is extremely proficient with hard artillery from a planet that has no weaponry whatsoever, Alderaan. So interesting to learn why maybe she was off planet when that planet was destroyed by the Death Star, etc. So that's an interesting twist on Cara Dune, to learn that she's from Alderaan. And I'm curious to see where they're going to take that, because I know Cara will be back. I know Greef Carga will be back. Every time they brought up the Mandalorian Creed, I thought for sure Carl Weathers would say, "Creed, I want you! I want you! I want you!"
I tell you what, there is no doubting the passion and the excitement of Carl Weathers in this role as Greef Carga. He chews up the scenery, and I love it. Great.
So I'm giving a homework assignment out there to every listener of Rebel Force Radio. Binge watch The Mandalorian Season 1. Watch it from beginning to end. You can possibly do it in a single day. And then we'll come back here in the middle of January, and we'll do a Season 1 Mandalorian after show live. We'll be taking your calls and giving you our thoughts on the series as a whole, which, by the way, I give 5 stars to. I love it.
Oh, it's just incredible. Pete, wonderful. I was asking you when you first got here tonight, I said, well, tell me what you think about Mandalorian, because I know that as a Star Wars fan, the underworld, the Mandalorians in general, everything has been, this seems like it's a TV series made for Pete Nadel.
It actually was. It's an underreported story that they actually came to me and asked me, what do you want to see on the screen? And I was flattered, but you're welcome. Because
that's not true.
No, that's not true. Of course not.
They only do that for Transformers.
That's right. So, no, a couple things that just stand out about the series is, one is I love that it's just accessible for everyone. You don't have to be a hardcore Star Wars fan to really enjoy it and really love it. And 2, I love that we're moving away from the strict formats of time and the setup of a show. The story is whatever it is. It's like a podcast. If it takes 30 minutes to tell a story, that's what it is. If it takes 45 minutes, that's what it is. So they don't have a special moment of each episode where it's 5 minutes of Mando on the vac tube reading Beskar Daily just to fill in the sequence.
Right.
They get to the point. The story is there, and you just love it. So really enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for tuning in, listening. This has been great and a lot of fun for me. Thanks Jason and Jimmy for having me back. I'll come back again in 2 years.
Welcome home, Pete.
Good to have you, buddy. And it's good to have all of you listening in and watching. Don't forget to follow us again on all of our social media channels. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook and Instagram at Rebel Force Radio. We're RFR Rebel Force on Twitter. And the website for all things and everything Rebel Force Radio is rebelforceradio.com. So we thank you very much for calling in and being a part of this Mandalorian after show. So we'll see you one more time for Season 1. We want to do a big wrap-up, as we said, and it's going to be a great time. We'll make sure that we get to all of your calls. We'll pre-announce it so that everybody gets an opportunity to call in. But it's just been a blast. This is exactly what we hoped this show would be, not just The Mandalorian, but our little part in it with the after show. So until next time, we'll see you. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack, and of course our special guest,
Pete Nadel.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.